How did you become interested in sustainability and the company that you've created?
Yeah, thanks. I think I might take a step back. As educators, you often come across some of those students that are falling through the cracks, that don't know what, they want to do, that might come from a disengaged family, and that was me. I was, a student in primary school that went through 6 primary schools, was either suspended too much or expelled from them all, and I suppose that was kind of driven a lot from family trauma and circumstances that were happening outside of school. But then when I came to grade 6, you're preparing for high school, and it became a bit too much. So halfway through grade 6, I dropped out, and I didn't go for school for 2 terms. And obviously, your parents, which I only had one of them, and my grandparents raised me, they're starting to look at, well, what's the options? We've got this kid that's constantly getting expelled. He is just an absolute menace. The teachers love him but hate him. So what are we going to do? So, obviously it wasn't an option for me to go to a mainstream school. None of them would say yes. Those one school reports were not looking great. So I got enrolled in a flexi school, a special assistance school. And I suppose, if you're not aware, they're schools that disengaged kids go to, where, they might come from foster home, they might have intellectual, disabilities, they might just be disengaged from their behaviour. And, at that school, for quite a few terms, probably the first year, I was still getting in trouble a lot, ending up in detention, getting sent to the principal's office. But once a teacher come up to me, and I'm so blessed to still be in communication under his mentorship now to this day, but he pulled me aside, and I thought he was just trying to convince me to, get more engaged and pull my head in. But he said to me, "Kurt, you're a leader." He said, "You have the potential to do, whatever you want, to be a politician, to be a CEO, to start a business." And I was like, "Mate, shut up. I'm not going to class. It's not going to happen." But that always stuck with me, and I suppose he and other teachers kept drilling that into me. And over those couple of years, I very much figured out that I wasn't good at maths and English, was constantly failing. I couldn't sit still in the classroom, but I loved going on school camps. I loved going and hiking. I loved canoeing 42 Ks up the river. I loved being outside on the campus, in the bush, building huts, using education in a different way through animal science and trade and sustainability. So I quickly fell in love with, 1, my passion for nature and conservation, but then 2, a part of that is the leadership and what nature and conservation, sustainability, and actually just being outside, put sustainability aside, can actually do for young people's mental health and their capacity and their leadership. So, over a couple of years, I suppose I came out of my shell. I stepped into my potential as a young leader in high school, and, I was a student that was going to the principal, knocking on the door. "Why isn't this happening? Why haven't we run this? You've just released a new master plan and we don't have this facility. Why not? What's wrong with the uniform? Why haven't we not got a new uniform?" So I quickly realized that I did have those, I suppose, characteristics of, a problem solver, a thinker, a visionary, and going, from a student that was leading kids, I suppose you might have some of those kids that are called eshays. That was me. It's pretty unbelievable when you now look at, a 20-year-old that's running a national non-for-profit. That was me. So if you're struggling with those students, you've just got to come at it from a different approach. You've got to think about them as an individual, someone who is struggling, but just because they're on the spectrum or because they have ADHD, it doesn't mean that they're incapable. It doesn't mean they don't have a future. It's actually thinking, all right, what is this young person passionate about? What does float their boat? What does make them happy? Because for me, that was being outside, that was helping people, that was working with animals, that was, doing outdoor education. So over those couple of years, I stuck to that. I stuck in that lane and I was good in it. And the teachers weren't pressuring me to reach all these standards and bars and TAFE and uni and all these exams. No, I just stuck to what I was good at and hopefully it did well. I then got involved in community volunteering because I just wanted to be a part of change, and I did bush care and I did Australia Zoo volunteering and I did youth parliament at one stage, and I was on local committees, and all of those experiences kind of gave me the Lego blocks to then, when I got to grade 11 and 12, to start figuring out what did I want to do after school, because I wasn't passionate about going to university. I didn't want to go to TAFE, but there is always another option. And for those disengaged kids, it is finding what they're passionate about, not giving them high expectations for all this other rubbish that education puts on young people. Are they an entrepreneur? Have they got an idea to a problem? Like actually dreaming for that kid, believing in them that that can be something that is real for them. Are they creative? Do they love music? Are they someone that maybe should just benefit and going traveling after school for 6 months and going to Bali and seeing all the rubbish on the beach and seeing a turtle in distress and then coming back to Australia and starting a non-profit that reduces waste in the environment? Is it that young person needs to go to Africa and experience disadvantage in its rawest form and then come back and get an idea that's going to spark a change maker that will change an industry and a community for that young person? Actually taking a step back and looking at it, from a more broad approach, that just because a kid is in a special school or a flexi school or a Montessori school or is in a special ed unit at a mainstream school or has ADHD or is on the spectrum, get rid of all the rubbish. What are they good at? What do they love? What makes them a unique thinker? Tackling that, believing in them. And I think that, mate, young people can have the biggest future if we as an education industry and as teachers can actually just look differently, can approach that student more in a unique way and give them a little bit more attention. Because if you don't, they're going to end up in juvenile detention. They're going to end up on the streets. They're going to end up on the couch or gaming for the rest of their life. A little bit more attention, like I got at a flexi school, changes lives. And I think it all comes back to teachers.
Fantastic. I think we have a keynote speaker in our midst. And I think actually in awe of what you've done, but even more so that at 21 deciding to start a not-for-profit organisation. I mean, you mentioned Eshays. Most things with Eshays want brands and money and fast cars and so what drove you to want to go into the not-for-profit and do what you've done?
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of like part 2 to my 5-second break. But when it was grade 11, it was my business assessment to come up with an idea. So obviously it was just for my assessment. We had to come up with your mission, your vision, your values, your business plan. And kids were doing e-commerce, fashion brands, mechanical workshops, beauty salons, and I was volunteering in the community. And I very quickly realised after 3-4 years of community volunteering that I was the only young person present, always. And there are lots of young people that want to create change. They want to get out there. They want to be a part of a community, especially in the conservation, climate, environment space. You look at organisations like Landcare Australia, like Bushcare, like Sea Shepherd. A lot of these organisations are heavily influenced and occupied by retirees as volunteers, or the organisation is directed at one specific cause, marine life for Sea Shepherd, or an organisation that's trying to protect that patch of land, vice versa. But I thought, wow, there's actually such a niche to create a national community where we can raise up young leaders that are passionate about the environment, put them in a role that leads initiatives in their community. So that was my business assessment, and it was called Coexist Australia, and I had this dream to start a network of branches. We call them collectives because branches sound like an old-fashioned word. And it was, we would start on the Sunshine Coast in Brisbane, and then we would expand out and we would get young people engaged in planting trees and building forests and cleaning the beaches and getting them just outside. It's one thing to talk about climate and sustainability and global warming, but man, we've got to take a step back. If we want to achieve good environmental results, why aren't we getting more young people outside? We've got to connect them with nature. And to be completely honest, it's not just about the environment. We're connected with the environment. It's about young people. It's about people. It's about getting our community connected with nature, because yes, that'll have great impacts on the environment and climate, but wow, look at the impacts that'll have on that individual. Loneliness, anxiety, depression, leadership capacity. So I ended up doing a couple of things in senior school. I did a Certificate 3 in Education Support because I always dreamed of being a teacher. I was playing schools in my room after school every day. But I knew that university wasn't an option, and I had this idea from grade 11, and I started to pull other volunteers from other organisations and friends, and we went as the Coexist crew and would go to these other environmental organisations events, and we were the young crew that would come along and help out. And I suppose that morphed. I finished school, got a dream job back then for me, working for Sunshine Coast Snake Catchers straight away as their media manager, managing all the social media, helping with the TV show, and I did that up until May last year. I graduated school 6 months after. I was still wanting to make Coexist a thing, working full time. Then I went to some board members of an organisation that I was volunteering for and said, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. And they helped me register the charity. Didn't have any money. Come from a very disadvantaged, disengaged family. We registered the charity. We built a board. 6 months after that, I then launched 6 branches straight away in Queensland and in most of the cities and major towns. And, we appointed a leader for Cairns, Townsville, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunny Coast, and we would get those leaders to organise a monthly event or 2 events a month, a recreation, social, community building event, a community hike, snorkeling, those type of activities, and then an action. So planting trees, cleaning beaches, citizen science. And then I was doing that for the whole of 2023 whilst working, managing 250 volunteers. Then I stood into 2024, still working full-time for Sunshine Coast Snake Catchers, and I went over to Perth. We had just started our first non-Queensland branch, and I was walking down the street of the main city in Perth as a kid that's never been to another capital city. Wow, this is so awesome. And I got a call, and this lady said, hello, my name's Lynn, and I work for the Fairfax family. We want to collaborate with you. And I was like, is this just like a beach cleanup organisation that wants to do a beach cleanup with us? Long story short, after 6 months of working and collaborating, $537,000 landed in the Coexist bank account. And in 2023, we had 24 events, engaged 250 young people across Queensland and Perth. 2024, that then scaled. We got the money in the new financial year, so in July last year. I then quit Snake Catchers, went full-time with Coexist, and last year we did 120 events across the country and engaged 1.8 thousand people, so nearly 2,000 young people, and that's 61 beach cleanups, it's 10 tree planting projects, it's 31 community hikes, and I suppose that was a year where someone believed in us, and now we've been able to do more, and that's the same with a teacher believing in a young person. And so far this year, I'm now full-time. We have 3 other paid staff. We have 15 young adults that are in university that are paid as contractors or casuals to run these community events. And it's a movement that's building. I'm now the co-chair of the Landcare Australia Youth Advisory Board, and I'm getting asked to speak at these national conferences about youth engagement and climate, and the COP conference coming up. Like, there is so much that young people can bring to our community, to organizations, but if we don't believe in them, then it won't happen. So that's the story of Coexist, and it's a big future ahead, not just for me, but all young people, if we believe in them, especially those ones that are disengaged and that don't want to go to uni and don't want to go to TAFE.